Welcome to Sage Audio. Today we're covering how to compress low end. But first, if you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. How to compress bass guitar. Let's start off by compressing instruments that mainly occupy the low frequency range. Although you can compress your bass guitar any way you want, typically, listeners enjoy a bass that's full and smooth sounding with a fair amount of dynamic control. For that reason, I'll use an optical compressor. I'll set the attack to 10 milliseconds and use a longer automatic release. A soft knee, 4:1 ratio, and 5 to 10 dB of compression is going to work well. So let's listen to how this controls the bass guitar. How to compress a kick drum. Like the previous chapter, how you approach a kick drum is going to be unique, but emphasizing mild distortion on a kick with a short attack, moderate release, and a hard knee is a popular route to take. Hitting a hard knee with a higher ratio is going to create a smack sound. A super short attack and release will emphasize a high frequency click sound, which can work well on kicks. So let's take a listen and notice how we achieve a more percussive sound with our compression. If you're enjoying the video, hit the like button. It helps us bring you more videos. Compressing bass synth. Last up, for individual instruments that we're going to look at, it's worth asking if compressing a bass synth really makes sense. Typically, a bass synth is already going to have a fair amount of dynamic control due to the oscillators that create these instruments having relatively consistent dynamics. Additionally, more modern bass synths that utilize samples often pull from already processed audio, making more compression somewhat redundant. Now, the main reason to add more compression to a synth would be for ducking, but we'll cover that in more detail later on. Let's listen to bass synth without and then with compression, and let me know in the comments if you think that the compression was needed. Upward compression on mixes lows. If we're working on a full mix or maybe a bus and we want to extract as much detail as possible, a low-level compressor is a good option. We could use it directly on the signal or set up a parallel send with a linear phase EQ. With the EQ, we could isolate just the lows and then use the upward compressor to ensure that only low frequencies are getting this increase in low-level detail. So let's listen and notice how this increases detail in the low frequencies. Only a small percentage of people that watch our videos are subscribed, so if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind. External side-chained dynamic EQ. Although dynamic EQ might not be considered compression, this trick is a good one, so I thought I'd include it here. I'll place an EQ on my bass guitar or synth and then select my kick drum as the external sidechain. After observing where they overlap, I'll create a band and make it dynamic with a negative range. Then I'll use the external sidechain as the band's trigger. Now, whenever the kick hits, this specific frequency of the bass is attenuated, creating some needed room for the two. So let's listen and notice how they both become more distinct. External side-chained downward compression. Similar to our last chapter, we can insert a downward compressor on our bass guitar or synth and set the external sidechain as the kick. After ensuring that the kick is triggering the compression, we can control how the bass is attenuated using the typical compressor settings. Like the previous chapter, this is going to create some room for both, although it may become noticeable or create pumping at higher levels. So let's listen and notice how this creates room for the kick drum. Does compression cause low frequency distortion? One thing to keep in mind when compressing your low frequencies is how certain settings are going to cause distortion. If the attack and/or release is shorter than the length of an individual waveform, you'll get distortion, which we saw in Chapter 2 could be a good or bad thing. If we divide 1000 by the frequency, for example 1000 divided by 20 Hz, we see that we get one waveform every 50 milliseconds, meaning an attack or release shorter than this is going to cause distortion. This is going to be more noticeable on a full mix, so let's take a listen to it and consider when this effect could be useful. If you're enjoying the channel, join the community with the link in the description. Isolating mids before compression. If you're mastering a track and you want to compress your low frequencies, it might make sense to attenuate the lows from the side image first. To do this, I'll use a mid-side EQ and create a high-pass filter on the sides to make the lows mono. Otherwise, compression and subsequent amplification of the lows may result in a muddy sound or one with a lot of phase cancellation or temporal masking. So let's listen to compression on the lows with and without this EQ in place. Mastering and multi-band compression. If you're mastering and you don't have access to your stems or individual instruments, then a multi-band compressor is the best option for controlling the dynamics of the low frequencies. Everything that we discussed previously, like distortion and how different compressor types affect the timbre, still applies here. I usually like to isolate the kick and bass right up to before the snare, but depending on the bass guitar or the bass synth, you might need to set this range a little higher. So let's take a listen and notice how this offers a lot of control when mastering. Using Split EQ to compress. Split EQ is a really interesting processor that separates the signal into sustain and transients, meaning we can use it to expand or compress a signal. If we reduce the transients on the lows and increase the sustain, we'll cause compression. This becomes more useful over smaller bandwidths. So let's take a listen and notice how this controls dynamics but offers a unique timbre to the low end. Saturation compresses up and down. Saturation is a combination of soft knee compression and harmonic distortion, meaning we're controlling the dynamics from the peaks down as well as from the noise floor up by adding low-level signal. The heavier the saturation, the greater the dynamic control, but the harmonics can greatly change the timbre. So let's listen to saturation on the low frequencies and consider how this can complement or replace typical compression. If you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching.